In this video, we're going to take a look at the ankle and lower leg injury to Everton's André Gomes. We'll look at the mechanism here of the injury, talk about the relevant anatomy involved that can be disrupted in these types of circumstances, and then finally we'll touch on what the medical team needs to focus on doing right there on the field whenever this happens. Make sure and go subscribe if you like this type of content and want to stay up to date with my future videos, and let's get started. The best that I could read from the news stories, it sounds like he had a fractured dislocation of his ankle. This image and position of his ankle relative to his lower leg is really what tells the whole story of how this injury happened. This is a similar foot position that we see with high ankle sprains, and basically what's happening here is his foot is going into a severe amount of external rotation while his leg is planted into the ground. And when this force becomes so overwhelming, you ultimately can tear the ligaments in the ankle, and then if it continues, cause the actual ankle to fracture, like what happened here with Gomes. Let's briefly review our anatomy in the ankle and lower leg, and then we'll come back to this picture of what happened with Gomes. Starting off with the ankle joint here, we of course have the tibia and the fibula that make up the two bones of the lower leg. Those come down to form the primary ankle joint, which is the tibio-talar joint, here between the tibia and the talus. We then of course have all of our ligaments on the outside and inside of the ankle, as well as our kind of classic high ankle sprain ligament called the AITFL. And that ligament specifically connects the fibula and the tibia to keep them from spreading too far apart from one another. Pay close attention to how this ankle joint looks. We call this the ankle mortise. You have the talus surrounded by the fibula and the tibia kind of enclosing it on either side. This means that we get a lot of motion with the foot pointing up and down, but we don't have quite as much motion with the foot pointing either internal or externally rotated. And this is really important here with how this happened to Gomes. Taking a look next here at the picture of kind of when this happened, this is the exact mechanism that we see whenever someone suffers a high ankle sprain, except in this case, the force just becomes so overwhelming that not only do you injure the ligaments, but you can also fracture the ankle. Looking at this image, we can see that his foot looks like it's pointed out in relation to his tibia or to his shin bone. The foot here is in an externally rotated position. Remember back earlier I talked about that ankle mortise. If we have that talus and we have it enclosed by the tibia and the fibula, and then we extremely rotate externally in that talus, what it's gonna do is it's gonna force that tibia and fibula to wanna spread apart as that bone is rotating. We have these ligaments, we have a syndesmosis between the tibia and the fibula that help keep those two bones together. But when the force becomes so overwhelming from such severe external rotation, especially when the foot is anchored into the ground like this, those ligaments can't hold up. Then if your force gets even higher, then you can also fracture the bones in the ankle along with having the dislocation. Oftentimes the bone that's breaking is the fibula here on the outside, just from being spread so far apart. Right away on the field, there's a couple of things the medical team needs to focus on to try to ensure the safety of his leg going forward. The key here is all about blood flow and trying to reduce potential risk of infection. Sometimes when you have a fracture and a dislocation like this, you can compromise the arteries supplying blood to the foot. And so that's going to be priority number one, is making sure that you don't lose any blood flow to those tissues in the leg. We couldn't tell from the photo if this was an open or a compound fracture or if the bone was all contained in the skin. I saw some of these photos going around, and I'm pretty sure this is actually an old photo and not actually the photo of what happened with Gomes. But when they're on the field, they're going to be making sure there's proper blood flow, and then they're going to try to reduce and relocate, if possible, that ankle joint. When you reduce it, you're basically getting those bones back in proper alignment and then putting some sort of a cast around it to make sure they stay in proper alignment before you get to the hospital. Finally, what does this mean long-term for his career? We've seen these types of injuries in other sports, and we've seen athletes come back from them. If you follow basketball, Gordon Hayward had an ankle fracture dislocation. We've seen other players have just pure ankle dislocations with no fracture. And so you can come back from these injuries. It's not so much about how the bones are gonna heal when you have a fracture, as it is about how the muscles, the nerves, and the tendons and ligaments can be damaged whenever you have these types of injuries. Generally, the bone heals pretty well. Even if it was a compound fracture where the bone came through the skin, you control the infections, you fix the bone, and usually it does pretty good. What's harder to recover from is the damage to the ligaments in the ankle that can get torn. If there's been damage to the muscle or damage to the nerves, those are the things that are ultimately going to determine how well someone is able to come back from this type of an injury. People ask in my videos, what can you do to prevent these injuries sometimes? And with something like this, there's nothing you can do. There is nothing that Gomes could have done to prevent this from happening to his leg. No amount of exercises, weightlifting, or anything is going to prevent the ligaments from breaking in this situation and then ultimately leading to the broken bones. That's it for the video though, everybody. I hope you guys learned something here talking about ankle fractures and ankle dislocations, specifically this mechanism of severe external rotation as it applied specifically here to André Gomes. Let me know any questions or comments you have below, and until next time, we'll see you later.